Hello students, I am Dr. Atanu Jana, Professor and Head Department of Dairy Technology, Shet MC College of Dairy Science, Anand Agricultural University, Anand, Gujarat. Today I will be discussing on paper number 13, that is food additives. In that I will be discussing module number 7, that is stabilizers, thickeners and gelling agents. You know that the appearance of any product as well as body and texture, whenever we go for sensory evaluation of any food, these two aspects, color and appearance as well as the body and texture, makes you like that particular product for such characteristics. Now, these thickeners, stabilizers or gelling agents, they are such food additives, chemical compounds which have got ability to hydrate water, increase the viscosity of the medium to the extent that even they can form a gel, and finally you can enjoy the desired consistency in the resultant product. To give you a simple example of a food with use of stabilizers, one is a jam, jelly and marmalade. Pectin is the favored stabilizer for that, in which it gives such a gel in presence of the sugar, because sugar content in jam jellies is around 60 to 65%. Now, pectin needs sugar to form a gel. Only under such conditions it forms a gel, and then you enjoy the consistency. In jam it is little bit spreadable also. Marmalade also you can spread it on a bread and eat it, and jelly you can use it as a flavoring in ice cream as well. So, such gelling agents, including preparation of custards based, starch based. So, these are, starch is again a wonderful gelling agent. So, in any food, for example tomato ketchup, you have two different brands, one with a low viscosity, another with a such great viscosity that it comes out and it has a shine whenever you are taking it out of a container in a particular bowl. So, that particular aesthetic appeal is also improved by use of such stabilizers, which are synonymously known as hydrocolloids. Now, there are an array of stabilizers having origin from maybe plants, from seeds, from even fermentation derived using microorganisms, and even synthetic ones which does not have a very good image from the consumers. However, there are from this array of stabilizers, let us see what are the functionality of each, in which food items do they work, and finally, what is the rate of addition by which they can increase the functionality and even appearance of such products. We will be seeing that in this particular module. We know that aesthetic appearance of any food is very important, and if viscosity or body of that particular food item is built up, the consumer always have a tendency to have liking for such food products. In this regard, use of hydrocolloids have come in to its aid. Let us see slide number 1, the classification of hydrocolloids based on their natural sources. The sources can be several, such as plant exudates, seaweed extracts, plant and seed gums, plant extracts, cereal gums and even fermentation derived gums. To take an example of the plant exudate, these include gum arabic, gum tragacanth, gum caraya, gum ghatti. The seaweed extracts include agar, alginates, carrageenan, furcellarin. For plant and seed gums, the examples include guar gum, locust bean gum, tara gum and tamarind. With regard to the plant extract, pectin is one very choiceable hydrocolloid which has got wide utility, particularly in preparation of jam, jellies and marmalade, and literally everyone knows regarding this pectin's role in such product. Cereal gums, particularly the starches and nowadays the modified starches made by certain modification in the process, so that less quantity is required and they give their resultant effect in the final product. The fermentation derived gums, though it will be little costlier because of its source, they are also very good in demand, and these includes xanthan gum and dextran. The animal derived, particularly in India, they will have limited acceptability due to the non-vegetarian source, but then they perform very good, and that is one is a gelatin, and casein, if you take it as a milk derivative from a cow source. So, caseinates also are animal derived. Going into further classification in slide number 2, the modified natural sources in terms of hydrocolloid. The first one includes the cellulose derivatives. These are very much in use, particularly in preparation of low fat foods like dairy foods, in which they have been even helpful in replacing the fat in the low fat foods. The examples include carboxymethyl cellulose, microcrystalline cellulose, methyl cellulose, hydroxyethyl cellulose and hydroxypropyl methyl cellulose. If you can see such derivatives of cellulose like methyl, propyl or hydroxyl, the groups which you are treating them to modify affects their functionality, and this is in turn affecting their change in the effect what they would have on the viscosity of the resultant product. The other derivatives in the modified natural includes the modified starches, the pre-gelatinized starches, propylene glycol alginate. Earlier we saw the regular alginate, wherein algine is the main important constituent which is responsible for its stabilizing action. Now, if you treat that with propylene glycol, it becomes a propylene glycol alginate, and its solubility both in cold and hot condition is very much favorable as against sodium alginate, which has to be solubilized only under temperature of some 68 to 71 degrees centigrade. Low methoxyl pectin, pectin we already saw in the natural ones, but then this last one, low methoxyl pectin, they can help in gelling only in presence of some added salts like calcium derivatives. So, they can help in preparing dietetic jams and jellies as well. Next, continuing with the classification of hydrocolloids, it is now the synthetic origin. Of course, from consumer point of view, nobody would like to prefer a synthetic over a natural one, but then yes, certain things, if they are allowed by Food Safety and Standards Act, a food entrepreneur would like to use it if it is helping him out in improving the functionality of the food. So, this include polyvinyl pyrrolidine and polyethylene oxide polymers. However, I have found very less utility of such synthetic stabilizers in the food. In this slide, I will be discussing about the ideal traits of a stabilizer. Now, there are a number of arrays of stabilizers of natural or even synthetic or semi-synthetic origin, but how would a food industry who wants to utilize this food additive go for selection of such stabilizer? Even there are some new novel stabilizers that are finding their way into the new names of food additives. The first one is they should be non-toxic. Obviously, I mean there should be no heavy metals coming from that, no allergenic materials, compounds which can affect the health of an individual. Second is its dispersibility in the food matrix wherever you are going to use it. To give an example, when sodium alginate is used as a stabilizer in ice cream, it will function only well when it is dispersed in the hot mix at a temperature of 68 to 71 degrees centigrade. Whereas, if you choose propylene glycol alginate, it is something which is cold as well as hot mix soluble. So, you have more flexibility in utilizing PG alginate compared to sodium alginate in the food system for its dispersibility. Third is the stabilizer should be such that it does not produce excessive viscosity under certain conditions. To give an example, if you use gelatin at say 0.2% level in ice cream mix and allow it to age for 12 hours and 24 hours, you will find at 24 hours it is excessively more viscous compared to what you saw it at 12 hours of aging. So, again, whereas if you use sodium alginate, it has got a limited viscosity buildup, after which it will not show further increase in the viscosity. Such constant sort of viscosity buildup is required in any food system. The stabilizer should not give a viscosity level at which at any stage, if that food is going to be strained, it should not clog or impede the strainer during its filtration stage. So, again that should be taken into consideration. The stabilizer, whether it is powder or in any form, should not impart any flavor. That means, it should be bland in nature, because supposing in some system it is being used at 1 or 1.25% and it has got its own intrinsic flavor. When you are using it at that particular level, it may impart that flavor into the resultant product, which is not desired. And lastly, if feasible, whatever stabilizer you are trying to use, if it is economical, again it will depend on the source. For example, microbial origin fermentation derived stabilizers like Gellan gum or xanthan gum, they are definitely costlier compared to your gums like gum carrageenan or locust bean gum. However, if you see the usage rate, in some cases the usage rate may be higher and they are cheaper. In other cases they may be cheaper and you need to use it at a less rate. So, again finally it comes to the economics of choosing of a given stabilizer for its usage. Coming to the next slide, which dictates the factors affecting choice of a stabilizer. The first governing choice is the solution clarity. For instance, certain fruit juices like fruit juice cordial or fruit juice nectar, people would want them to be absolutely sparkling clear. Now, supposing you are using some stabilizer to increase its viscosity and mouthfeel, and if it is not giving the desired clarity or haze, HAZE, in that case people probably would not like to go for such product. So, again choose a stabilizer which does not make the product hazy. Solubility at various temperatures. I gave you an example of sodium alginate, which is limited to use at a higher temperature in mixes. So, again solubility, if it is cold as well as hot soluble, more application would be there. Viscosity or gel characteristics required. The industry will decide whether they need a gel, for example, formation of a custard, formation of a French custard or a jam or a jelly. So, there the gel characteristics will be required. In other case, for example, ice cream, just build up of viscosity would be good enough. So, based on such, again your choice of the stabilizer would be depending. Next would be the dispersion problems. Even in ice cream and many other products, you will find if sugar is used as one of the ingredient, the stabilizer is mixed first in dry condition with the sugar and together they are added into the liquid, and this will help in better dispersion to avoid any problems. Next is the processing conditions, including the temperature. Nowadays, with the acceptance of UHT processing, which is carried out at a temperature of 135 degrees centigrade and beyond, maybe certain stabilizers of polysaccharide origin may get hydrolyzed at such high heat treatment. So, again we will have to think about those processing conditions which are meted out in the product manufacture, which may not hamper the action of the stabilizer. The rate of hydration, as such, aging of the product at a low temperature for several hours for a given period, like ice cream or whipped cream, is very important. Now, a certain stabilizer would need a certain period of aging period, because of which their hydration ability will be potent enough to give their functionality. So, if their hydration ability is good enough, they will be able to hydrate earlier than other stabilizers. Suspension ability, there are certain stabilizers which can keep the entire fluid in a homogeneous suspension. For example, sedimentation of cocoa particles in a chocolate milk drink or in a chocolate flavored milk. Now, certain stabilizers are able to keep these cocoa particles in suspension. So, again based on the application, you have to choose certain stabilizers for such application. Natural versus not natural, that is versus synthetic. There is a better image by the consumers for a natural rather than a synthetic origin stabilizer. So, based on that, you may think what image is already created by the customer on the product in which you are using such additives. The particle size desired, smaller the particle size even of the powder of the stabilizer, greater would be its solubility and probably the functionality. The acid stability, there are some protein based stabilizers, for example, gelatin, collagen. Now, under acidic conditions, maybe some of their functionality may change, or they may perform better under alkaline conditions than under acidic conditions. So, again the acid stability of the stabilizer has to be looked into. And the last is the cost at the usage level. So, there are so many types of stabilizers, each used at a specific rate of addition. In one case it is cheaper, but needs to be added at a greater rate. So, again probably if you use a costlier one, but the usage rate is less, again probably it will be slightly more costly compared to the other one. So, the choice is entirely at the discretion of the food processor. Coming to the next slide, that is classification of natural plant hydrocolloid. They have been classified into three types, namely anionic seaweed polysaccharides, anionic exudate polysaccharides and non-ionic seed polysaccharides. To give an example of the first category, that is anionic seaweed polysaccharide, they include agar, alginates and carrageenan, which are very widely used in the food industry, especially dairy industry. The second, anionic exudate polysaccharides, these include arabic, ghatti, karaya and tragacanth gums. In the last non-ionic seed polysaccharide category, these include guar gum, locust bean gum and tamarind. Out of these three, particularly the guar and the locust bean gum, also known as galactomannan, because they contain galactose and mannose units in certain proportion, their usage rate is very widely accepted in dairy as well non-dairy food industry. The next slide shows you the photograph of the source, that is the Irish moss. The scientific name is Euchema cottoni, a source of carrageenan. For this carrageenan, again they are further purified into three separate classifications, such as iota, lambda and kappa carrageenan, each having its own property, maybe gelling, viscosity building and so on so forth. In the next slide, we can see the table wherein the classification of hydrocolloid by their function has been depicted. The function, the three functions indicated here include just as a thickener, second as a gelling agent, and third as a stabilizer, for example, stabilizing the emulsion or stabilizing the protein in a particular food system. So, if you see guar gum, it is acting only as a thickener, locust bean gum also acting as a thickener, pectin, it acts as both a gelling agent as well as a stabilizer, and as I told you, the role of pectin in jam, jelly and marmalade, and especially if you see the marmalade wherein there are suspensions of the orange peels which are suspended in the entire juice of orange in a orange marmalade, such gelling is very important characteristic, so that there is no settling of such peels to the bottom of the container. Alginate, they have got all these three, thickener, gelling and stabilizer. Carrageenan has got two, namely gelling and stabilizer. Cellulose derivative, they are important thickener agents only. For gum arabic, it is both a thickener as well as a stabilizing agent. Similarly, xanthan gum and starches, both also finding good utility. They have both functions of thickener as well as a stabilizing agent. However, they cannot be used to form a food gel. Coming to the next slide, this shows you the comparative viscosity of 1% solution of an individual hydrocolloid or stabilizer when aged for 24 hours in a media. The viscosity at a given temperature has been specified as unit of centipoise. You can see they have been shown in decreasing centipoise, starting with locust bean gum, all used as 1% solution, 3200 centipoise, sharing the same viscosity with guar gum. Then with decreasing, it goes with methyl cellulose, Irish moss, that is carrageenan, then gum arabic and starch paste, both with 100 centipoise, and lastly quinseed stabilizer with just 50 centipoise, all used at 1% solution rate. This indicates that what is the potency of a thickener of a given hydrocolloid when used under a given condition. The next slide or table shows you the recommended concentration of the gelling agents used in food industry. However, for a given food, the manufacturer of the stabilizer or hydrocolloid may recommend a specific utility based on the potency of the thickener. In general, it can be recommended that for agar, the concentration of gelling agent used should be 1 to 2% by weight of the product. Alginate, same rate, 1 to 2%. Carrageenan, it ranges from less around 0.5 to up to 3% level, depending on the product in which they are used. High methoxy pectin, 2 to 4% level, low methoxyl pectin, 0.1 to 4% level. These two pectin particularly can serve as a very good hydrocolloid in gelled product like jam, jellies and marmalade. They can also form as a very good gelling agent in case of fruit purees used in fruit yogurt or in fruit based ice cream. The gelatin, though from animal source, may be used wherever applicable at 1 to 5% rate of addition, depending on the type of product, and gel and gum has been recommended for use at rate of 0.5 to 1.5%. This last one is a microbial derived fermentation gum, which is widely having a wonderful application in the food industry. We have seen the carrageenan, the source, Irish moss, and I had named the different classification of the purified forms of individual carrageenans. Let us compare why there are differences when using such individual kappa, iota and lambda carrageenans. If you see particularly the ester sulfate group and secondly the anhydro bridges, these are varying among these three classification, and hence their functionality in either forming a brittle gel or an elastic gel, which will be coming in the forthcoming slide, can be understood by such differences in the ester sulfate and the anhydrous bridges. In kappa carrageenan, the ester sulfate is 25%, in iodide it is 32%, whereas in lambda it is 35%. That means, there are varying ester sulfate groups in the given refined type of individual carrageenans. Similarly, for anhydrous bridges, in lambda there are little or nil anhydrous bridges, whereas in iota it is 30% and in kappa it is still higher to the tune of 34%. These changes in the ester sulfate and anhydrous bridges results in their different functionalities when used in food systems as a hydrocolloid. Gels, food gels. The kappa carrageenan forms a clear brittle gel, whereas iota forms a clear elastic gel. Elastic gel will be more preferred by a consumer than a brittle one. For iota, it forms a firm rigid gel, whereas iota carrageenan gives a soft tender gel. Kappa carrageenan gives more syneresis, iota carrageenan gel does not give any syneresis. Syneresis means oozing out of the liquid from the gelled structure. Syneresis is considered to be a defect in any food which has a gelled consistency. For kappa carrageenan, it requires sodium ion to form a gel, whereas iota carrageenan requires calcium to form a gel. Kappa carrageenan gel forms based on heat reversible, whereas iota carrageenan is also a heat reversible gel. Kappa carrageenan sets at room temperature, and same is the case with iota carrageenan, which can also form set at room temperature. Both of the gels formed using either kappa or iota carrageenan are shelf stable at ambient or even refrigerated conditions. The native starches, when used as a hydrocolloid, have limited functionality, but by due modification, may be chemical, may be physical, including heat, their property can be changed drastically. The rate of addition of such modified starches are decreased, and they can perform wonderful even using as a gelling agent. The examples of such modified starch which have found good usage in the food industry include acid or alkali treated starch, bleached starch using chlorine, oxidized starch, enzyme treated starch, particularly using amylase which can break down the polysaccharide starch, monostarch phosphate including the phosphate group, distarch phosphate esterified with sodium trimetaphosphate, acetylated distarch phosphate, acetylated distarch adipate, hydroxypropyl starch, and finally, starch sodium octenyl succinate. Now, remember, whenever we are chemically modifying using such groups like octenyl succinate or hydroxypropyl, it is turning towards a synthetic one, wherein in certain cases FSSAI would be permitting legally under good manufacturing practices at a fixed level. However, from consumer point of view, image of a natural starch or any other product hydrocolloid will be definitely greater than that of a synthetic starch. Having gone through this entire PowerPoint presentation on this specific type of food additive, that is stabilizer, thickeners and gelling agent for the food industry, let me sum up and summarize on how important is the stabilizer as a food additive in the food industry. Firstly, these hydrocolloids or stabilizers, they can improve the aesthetic appearance of the product, for example, a gloss or shine in the product through particularly increase in the viscosity. Then they definitely help in improving the body and texture and even viscosity of fluid products. Body and texture will be related for the solid foods, and viscosity buildup will be for the liquid foods. So, again the sensory evaluation, whenever you are analyzing any product for its sensory qualities, these two, color and appearance as well as body and texture, plays an important role in its acceptability, and use of these food additives at a very minuscule level, say at 0.2 level to up to 1% or 1.5% level, can make a lot of quality difference just because of the functionality aided by such wonderful colloids known as hydrocolloids. Even in some cases, they can increase the stability of the product. For instance, in yogurt, if you want to thermize a fermented product where it is acidic, the pH is around 4.1 to 4.3, acidity is around 0.75 to 0.8. The proteins are already in a little destabilized condition because of the high acidity. Now, here certain types of stabilizers can enhance the stability of the protein, and they will prevent formation of nodules or flakes in the fermented product if you are using this before you go for thermization of the product. In certain beverages, there is some separation, phase separation, a thicker portion and a lighter portion separating out by density difference. Now, use of such hydrocolloids will help in having homogeneity in the thing, and the appearance will be better and there will be no phase separation. So, finally, I can say that these are wonderful functional ingredients which can make a difference to the quality of the food in which they are used as a food additives. Thank you.